Hello, good evening, and welcome back. This is probably going to be more contentious than normal for you guys, but not as controversial perhaps. So, from the Daily Mail, carers who sleep at their workplace overnight are not entitled to the minimum wage for the whole shift, Supreme Court rules. And I know that there's a lot of disagreement on this, but for once, I suppose, and the only time, I'm agreeing with the Supreme Court here. And this is simply because if you're on call, then you're not working, and if you're not working, you're not earning. But more than this, it comes down to the agreement, the contract between the employer and the employee, and that's basically it. I'm not a proponent in the minimum wage at all, and therefore, if there's agreement between the employer and the employee, job's done. That's it. I mean, there are many ways for them to try and get around minimum wage requirements as well. If you say that the minimum wage is whatever it is for this hour of work, and the employer thinks, yeah, but I don't want to pay someone that much for an hour of simple work, maybe I could pay him less. No, not quite. Okay, in that case, what I'll do is I'll say, this is what I'll pay you for. However, there is the understanding that it requires preparation and tidying up afterwards, which you're not getting paid for, because that is not what I'm paying you for. But it is a requirement in order to set up and tidy up after yourself. It's that kind of thing that then gets around the minimum wage. Or, I require you to do this much work, and I expect it to be done in this amount of time, and you do have to do this amount of work, otherwise you're fired. But it could take you longer, but you're not getting paid for any more work. That kind of thing. So there are ways around minimum wage if necessary. It's far more difficult to try and understand what a minimum wage would be, just as trying to understand what is equal pay for equal work. It's very, very difficult to actually qualify and pinpoint exactly what it is. And as we know, centralized planning doesn't work, in which case it's far better to be left down to the free market in order to decide what the cost or the price of things should be. Hence, long-winded way of saying, minimum wage, no good. Now, for this in particular, when it comes to being on call, so obviously all that I've said still stands, but let's just take it a bit further. When it comes down to sleeping in and not getting paid as much for minimum wage. Now, I've had jobs before where I had to be on call. Not sleeping in, mind you, but just being in within an hour. What that means is, of course, I can't go out or have a day to myself because I need to be ready to travel to work in order to, get myself ready and then travel into work if needed within an hour's notice. Personally, I was not paid for any of my on-call time. I was only paid for the job that I did. This meant if I was on call, I would much rather be called in or maybe swap those days for somebody who actually had work, because for whatever reason they didn't feel like working. They'd rather be on call and try and relax more. Maybe they lived nearer to work, whatever it might be. And so I would always be looking to get as much work as possible. So to try and put it in a similar situation to this, if you don't like not being paid enough for having a sleep-in, then rearrange so that you don't have a sleep-in. Or organise your sleep-ins so that they're on the busiest days, in which case you're going to get the most amount of work. So, quite simply, say, yeah, I'm not going to do a sleep-in because I don't think I get paid enough. So instead, I'm going to arrive when you need the work doing, and I'm going to do that work. And it would be as simple as that. If your employer decides, no, I want somebody who will sleep here and then get paid when I wake them up and they've got work to do, then so be it. But as it stands, again, quite simply, if you don't like it, don't do it. In particular, they have Mrs. Tomlinson Blake, who works at the East Riding of Yorkshire, who was paid £22.35 for a sleep-in shift between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m, plus 1 hour's pay at the then national minimum wage of £6.70, making a total of £29.05. This might sound harsh, but I don't think we should be focusing so much on minimum wage. I really don't. Especially when a lot of the arguments on the other side here are saying they're highly skilled and being paid pittance and the government should do more. And I'm thinking, no, it's the National Health Service that surely has made this a problem in the first place. So that is the government. So if you want them to get paid more, then you take the government out of it, and therefore the market can respond much quicker and adapt and pay people what they are earning. And then it's supply and demand. If there are a lot of people going for these positions and there's not a lot of demand for them, then of course it's a seller's market. So that is not going to be a good wage. And that seems to be the pushback from the other side, to say they're so good and yet they're not getting paid enough. So, well, okay, then by all means you can hire them, start your own care home, fund them better. If it turns out that they are highly skilled and therefore they should be paid more, and you pay them more, and that's reflected in the work that's being done, then your care home will be more popular, people will be willing to pay more for your superior service, and jobs are good. And that is how the market should work. But of course it can't when you've got price caps set by the government through centralised planning. So to me, it's an incredibly simple solution. Instead of trying to change things then and apply them retroactively, which is what would be done here, meaning a lot of care homes would then go under. And, of course, if they are so skilled, then you don't need the minimum wage argument in the first place. Surely. If somebody's highly skilled, they'd be earning more than the minimum wage. And chances are, if you were to set up a care home like I've just described, where they'd be paid more than the minimum wage, they'd be doing more than the minimum work, and they'd be better than the minimum level of carers. In which case, they are more highly skilled. So it's a self-defeating argument, but I think that this really needs to be looked into and worked through, because a lot of surface level reading tries to suggest, oh, this is unfair, seeing as they are there, they should get paid. I was like, well, that's between them and their employer. Why is it down to you to say, oh, there's an interaction happening between these two people, which is completely voluntary, and they both agree to the terms, but I don't like it, so I'm going to squeeze my way in and try and mess things up for them. No, don't do that. Maybe the carer is taking this position knowing that they need some more experience and actually need to know what goes on day to day in order to then progress up the ranks, and so they're very grateful that there are more positions available because they don't need to be paid as much, that they can then get this experience under their belt. And then other people saying, well, yeah, you have a sleep-in shift, it's not really a sleep-in because you're disturbed a lot of the time, and then you do actually have to work almost every night that there's a sleep-in. Brilliant. Then of course you're not going to get paid for sleeping because you're not sleeping, you're actually working. But please do try and enlighten me down below if you think that there's more to it than this. Go ahead. If you're saying that if somebody's on call, they should be paid more for being on call. But does that then mean that... What? I mean, obviously if you're needed outside of office hours, then you've got overtime for most people. But it's a foreign concept to me. But does that then mean that, seeing as there's a possibility that you'll be needed out of office hours, you should be paid for the entire time you're out of the office as well? It's not very universal. It's far easier to just have an agreement between employer and employee, in which case the government can stay out. But let me know down below. Always intrigued to hear what you guys had to say, and I'm sure this one will be more thought-provoking than normal. But as always, until next time, have a good one.